Okay, so Venom was trash in my opinion, yet weirdly I did kind of love it. Its weirdness made it more appealing to me, and when a sequel was announced, I was excited to see what someone could do with Venom if it was, a good movie. So, taking what we've learned from the original, here's my personal pitch for how Venom 2 should be made, and what could be done to make it an even better sequel. So, without further ado, here's the plot synopsis. When a dangerous gang of costumed criminals begin a string of heists in New York City, Eddie Brock travels east to track down the killers and stop them before they cause more harm than good, aided by unlikely ally Silver Sable and relying on vague clues and information from an ex-accomplice of the group, the murderous Cletus Cassidy. Eddie has to get more in touch with his Venom side than ever before and struggles with whether he can keep himself from being consumed by the darkness inside of him. Meanwhile, a mysterious new symbiote lands on Earth and tracks Eddie, looking to bond with him. So, now that's the basic synopsis. I'm going to go through each of the points and choices in that synopsis and what they would mean for a potential future film. Number 1. Carnage is not the villain. Yes, you heard that right. We're saving Carnage for the threequel for a number of reasons. First, having two symbiotes as the main villains 2 movies in a row is a little stale, so it's nice to mix things up. This also gives us time to get to know Cletus Cassidy as he plays the Hannibal Lecter, Calendar Man type role, dishing out vague clues that both help and hinder Eddie in his journey to stop the killers. Hopefully this way we can learn more about him and what he did to get in jail. I think the more we learn about him the better, because based on his appearances in the Venom post-credit scene, he's currently just a random set of quirks to make him seem scary. True crime is a huge phenomenon at the moment, and I think making sure Carnage is understood and has relative depth is a must. All this will help to make him a huge threat for the third film once he escapes. 2. So, if not Carnage, who is the villain? Well, I've decided to go for Jack-O-Lantern, most known for being a B-list Spider-Man villain, really just a less good version of the Goblin. But I think whenever there's a character who's not quite as loved as usual, it gives us an opportunity to tweak aspects of the character for this movie's gain. So we're going to turn Jack-O-Lantern into a collective or cult of people. While there is a main boss who will carry the Jack-O-Lantern look, the group is made of about 24 crooks, all with their own specialities and talents. Think of them something like a mix between Joker's goons in the opening of The Dark Knight and the terrorists from Die Hard. They're a cult-like gang who commit to their Halloween horror aesthetic, which would be really cool if the movie gets an October release date to match the theme. But more than anything, the most important part of Jack-O-Lantern and his crew is their use of fire. Fire is a weakness to symbiotes, and having them turn it against Venom would be a neat twist and make them a worthy adversary. By having a group walk the line between organisation and chaos, they present a dangerous mixed bag who you're never quite sure what they're going to do next. The movie would open on a heist by the group similar to the opening of The Dark Knight, in which we'd find out truly how brutal they are. Number 3. Why New York? Well, this one for a number of reasons. First of all, New York is a key location in the Spider-Man and Venom mythos, and moving him there just feels more homely for a Marvel film. Perhaps we could set up connections to the Daily Bugle and other Spider-Man references without outright connecting him to the MCU. Secondly, it gets Anne and the love story out of the movie. I think Michelle Williams was okay in the film, but with a sequel like this, she either needs to be beefed up a role and given more stuff to do, or simply removed from the franchise. I'm sticking with the latter, which will give us more time to develop the relationship between Eddie and Venom, who are really the only characters that matter. The third reason we want to relocate to New York is simply because if we set the film towards wintertime, we can have snow. This would really help with the visual palette by making Venom stand apart from the background, meaning that we don't have to film so many scenes at night, and if you did film night scenes, there would be more contrast with the background. The visual will overall look more clear and make Venom look more scary as he stands out against the white snow. It'll also help turn the amazing credit colour palette into a reality in this film. 4. Who's the new symbiote? Well, early in the film, a red symbiote will land in from space and will begin a perilous journey to track down Eddie Brock and the Venom symbiote. By the end of the movie, it will choose Cassidy instead, leading the duo to break out as Carnage. This may feel a little disjointed from the plot, but despite what I said about symbiotes needing to not be the only thing in the franchise, they are important to the world, would work well as a subplot in this movie. It would be nice to explain why this symbiote came to Earth. Perhaps he's a leader trying to invade, or perhaps a criminal from Clintar trying to escape from justice. Matching criminal symbiote to criminal human would be double trouble for sure. But most of all, the idea of symbiotes making its way to Eddie would be great to keep up the horror and break up the story a little bit, while also doing right of the similar story in the first, in which the symbiote somehow took 6 whole months to get to an airport. I want to see this idea with the horror and the body snatching idea done right, and I think Carnage is the one to do it with. 5. What about the tone? Well, we know one of the negatives of the last film is that it was just jarring and it had a very uneven tone, so I think it's important to fix that out. I think the film deserves a 15 rating, or R in the US, and I think it would work well to get us closer to the desired product. The film needs to get rid of what didn't work and keep what did, leaving behind action, the horror, and the humorous banter between Eddie and Venom. By cutting a lot of the drama and a lot of the romance, I think we're left with a better, purer film with a stronger core. 6. What do you mean, darkness within him? Well, I think Eddie needs a solid arc, and by pushing him to bring truth and justice to the killers, he pushes himself harder and harder than ever, especially since he's separated from Anne, who was basically his moral compass and his rock. We see Eddie push himself to new limits to catch them and to beat the bad guy, and through his frequent talks with Cassidy, he begins to understand more and more and empathise more and more with killers, something that makes him more likely to become a criminal and a killer himself. When all seems lost in the second act, he parts ways with Venom, but deciding the two need each other to win, he embraces the darkness to take down Jack-o'-lantern. Addressing the balance required to be an anti-hero is a key theme in this movie, as Venom further reflects on his comic book roots by turning more and more villainous, with nothing or no one to stop his descent. He becomes a monster to stop one, per se. 7. What about Silver Sable? Well, with Anne, her boyfriend, the scientist lady who died, Carlton Drake gone, any minor San Francisco characters also gone, we've pretty much been left with Eddie, Venom, and Carnage as the only characters we're carrying across to the sequel. And while I think that's great, we need some more side characters and at least one female cast member of importance. This is why I've gone for Silver Sable, who's had a big profile boost as of late because of her appearance in the Spider-Man PS4 game. I think either Lea Seydoux or Alicia Vikander would make great choices, who, if Sony planned to make a Silver Sable movie, could be cast here first and then spin her off into her own film later. She'll start as a foil at first, being hired to track down the Carnage symbiote, but after the symbiote leads Silver Sable to Eddie, the two fight and she tries to bring him in. After realising there's a bigger threat at play here, the two go from enemies to unlikely allies and eventually friends. She'd act as the co-lead of the film and eventually maybe wouldn't become a romantic interest, at least not in this movie. The movie needs a new lead character, and I think she's it, as well as a smart way to tie the Carnage symbiote into the main story. So, if you have any other questions, go ahead and ask. That is my basic premise. The focus is on refining the tone, is on improving the cast, it's building up Carnage for that third villain, it's having a solid colour palette, reinforcing the horror, reinforcing the relationship between Eddie and Venom even further, pushing them into darker places, and overall turning everything from taking everything from Venom 1, taking the stuff we like, getting rid of what we didn't, and turning it all up to 11. Please, if you have any questions, let me know. I'd love to hear what you would suggest for Venom 2, and whether you want to see the movie at all. Leave your comments down below, and I will see you in the next video.
Ocean Man.